So today we're just going to continue through the elements that we started a few weeks ago. So we've gone through earth and water and wood, and metal is the element for this week, which is an element that's unique to the Chinese system. The Chinese are very practical in their element choosing, just things of the earth that were tangible that they could grasp onto. And so metal, this is a different sort of yin sequence just because it's mostly focused on the upper body, which typically in yin we'd stay between the navel and the knees. So we'll be doing a lot of stuff in the shoulders and the chest because this is where the meridians associated with the metal element run. They run up the outer and inner edge of the arm, all the way through to the associated meridian organs, which are the lungs and the large intestine. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So because of that, I like to start with a little bit of movement, and then it's actually a movement and breath, and then we'll do a little bit of just sitting, and then we'll get into the postures. So the breathing exercise I like to do is called fan hands. And what we do is just bring our arms out to the side with the palms up. Palms up. And then you start an inhale and just bring in the pinky, the ring finger, the middle finger, the index fingers, like you're making a fist, thumb. And then like you're making a muscle, you lift. And then you exhale, push forward, like you're pushing a heavy object forward. And then you flip pinky, ring, middle, index. And you're lifting the shoulders, you're really super flexing, and then you exhale, press out, kind of lifting the chest forward, bringing the arms back, yeah? And then you inhale, pinky, middle, oh yeah. Doing that. And then exhale. So we want to do a lot of force here, just so we're firing up the muscles of the arms, the forearms and the upper arms, and then flip, pinky, ring, middle, index. Biggest inhale, and then forceful exhale. Good, inhale. And then exhale. Okay. Yeah, do it again. And thinking metal, the qualities of metal are, rigid and strong. So sort of embodying those qualities here. There's also a malleability to it too. So that's why we're able to move. And then we exhale. I'll just do 3 more at your own pace. Again, it might get a little tiring, that's okay. We're trying to get the fluid flowing, the blood moving, the muscles engaging. And maybe sometimes it's even heavier to push forward. Yeah, you can switch that up as well. I lost count, so one more round. Good. And then just let the arms settle, the hands in the lap or on the knees. And just let your eyes soften. I just want you to feel the rebound or the resonance of that simple exercise. We bring some non-judgmental awareness here, and what do we notice? You might feel a little tingling in the arms or the chest, even a little bit of achiness. Maybe the lungs feel more alive. Notice if the sensation is deep or shallow. Just simply observe the qualities of the mind here, the predominance of emotion. And as we begin to settle a little bit more, as the sensations from that breathing practice sort of settle down, just draw attention to the breathing, but in a different way, perhaps, than maybe you're used to. I really want you to focus on the actual mechanism of the breath. And so you feel the inhale and you feel the exhale for sure. You might follow the pathway of the breath, whether it's coming in through the nose or in through the mouth and down through the throat and into the lungs and then out. Which may feel like a very active process, which it is in some sense. It may feel like we're actually pulling air in and pushing air out. But really what's happening in all actuality is we're just opening the lungs, we're opening up space. And so we're opening up the space, and there's this pressure differential that happens between the internal and external. And air just sort of floods into the lungs. And so the action that we're doing is just opening the lungs and allowing the air to come in. And then the letting go of the breath is the lungs contracting and sort of pushing the air out. And so we create the space, and then we let go. And so there's this very passive quality to the breath. There's an allowing quality to it. It's like we're doing the inhale and doing the exhale. It can also be seen as that we're being breathed by the actual environment. Which creates this really intimate connection with our surroundings. And again, with the meadow element, the associated meridians are the lung and the large intestine. And so there's this idea of processing or refinement, of bringing in what's nourishing and then letting go of or getting rid of what's not needed anymore. And so we pull the oxygen in and then assimilate it. The body absorbs it. And then we get rid of waste. And what's interesting about that waste is other beings can use that waste. And so there's this another intimacy here, intimacy of exchange with other living beings. And so the meadow element is, again, this idea of refinement and the idea, the archetypal image of an alchemist. Alchemist taking impurities, impure base metals, and continuously refining them until they become a precious substance. which is really what practice is all about, whether it's yoga practice, meditation practice, pranayama, whatever it is, where it's a purification process of noticing what's there, noticing what's useful, and getting rid of what's not useful. And then the large intestine, of course, is about absorption and elimination. And throughout practice today, I want you to just stay with this really simple idea and staying with this mechanistic quality of the breath. And then also, again, this idea of refinement, where we can be a little bit more active in this yin practice because we're kind of being curious and searching and feeling things out and settling eventually. But we're really just trying to get to know the body. Again, it's not about perfecting a posture. It's about experiencing the posture. Let's just take a nice big inhale, filling the belly and the chest and the head. And a nice long exhale. And again, inhale. And letting go on the exhale. And one more time. Inhale. This time on the exhale, just slowly opening the eyes. Just allowing light and vision in. Yeah, and then let's just come forward to all fours. And call this tabletop in yoga. In Pilates, tabletop is actually on the back. So I'll call this tabletop. And just kind of just move through the spine. So call this cow and cat. And so extension in the spine is the cow, and then flexion is the cat. But not being too rigid about it. Maybe moving the hips around in circles. Maybe even kind of scooping the heart low. And just creating some movement here. And metal has this quality of rigidity, and we probably all know people who are overscheduled and super rigid. And this idea of the elements isn't to perfect each one, it's to create balance between all of them. And so one of the things with metal, the way we can create balance is to have movement or a little bit of freedom. Fire is actually what cuts metal, and fire will be next week. But metal can also be used to sort of rein in the water element. We tend to get overly emotional or too underscheduled, I guess. And now from here, what we'll do is just set back onto the heels or towards the heels and bring the knees a little wide. And I like to have a blanket for this, but it's not required. I'm going to spread it out in front. And we're just going to come into a wide-kneed child's pose. But once you get down there, let's reach the right arm forward. And then circle the right arm out to the right. And then we'll snake the arm underneath the left shoulder. And then set the shoulder down. Now the big movement here is to lift back up and then bring the left ribs to the inner left leg. So we're reaching over pretty far. Now, we don't have to bring our knees as wide as possible. Maybe they're in a little bit. We never want to do extremes here. But this pose tends to get a little uncomfortable. So if you're feeling discomfort, that's normal, and that's okay in a yin posture. What we don't want is pain, but discomfort's okay. There's actually a lot of lessons in the discomfort. And so, simple reaching. Now, what do I do with the left hand? So the left hand, you can either reach it forward. You could reach it around the body. Or sometimes I just bring the left hand to the ground beside the right hand and just lightly push into the ground, just creating a little bit more twist. But I want to encourage you to explore and feel around, not to the point of avoiding the posture, but just in an exploratory way where we're trying to find the most optimal position for the body. And again, if you're reaching with the left hand forward or next to the right hand, I like to come up to the fingertips, just because the fingertips tend to be amplification points for the meridians, because they all sort of end there or start there. And mind back to the breathing. Once you settle. And even after you settle, there's can be an over rigidity here. So know that you're always allowed to adjust, to move. I often, when I'm focusing on the lung meridian or the meadow element, I often just like to bring a deep sense of gratitude to the breath, to the lungs, to that mechanism. I mean, the breath never leaves us. It's with us from our first breath until our last. And we tend to forget about it for sure. And I remember when I first started to pay attention to my breath, when I first started these practices, just how good it felt to breathe. It's almost like an internal massage. So this deep appreciation for the breath and the process of breathing. Just another half minute here. So, you're always welcome to stay longer. You're always welcome to come out earlier. If you're ready, you can begin to just come out here. And I like to just walk the hands back and bring the knees in for a moment and just set. And it's called seiza in Japanese. Just for a moment and feeling the resonance of the posture. Again, if you have sensitive knees, you might just come all the way off the knees. And then we'll begin to make our way to the other side. Again, do as much movement as you'd like to. And I forgot to mention a blanket or something underneath the knees can be very helpful here. Sometimes I'll just roll the mat in, just fold it over so it's doubled up underneath the knees. And I'll just talk you through this once again. So just come forward, settle the hips back, and then I like to be dramatic with the arms. You don't have to be as dramatic as I am. Reach the left arm forward and then circle it out to the side and then come underneath. And then just settle the shoulder down and then lift back up and reach over, bringing the right ribs to the inside of the right leg. As close as you can. And then, wherever the arm goes, again, you can reach forward or to the side or wrap the arm around. Yeah, these meridians sort of run up the arms and across the chest and into the lungs, and so we're getting and down into the digestive system. So we're just kind of compressing these areas. You know, there's this almost aggressive aspect to the Yin Yoga where in the poses we're actually cutting off. We're cutting off flow of fluid. We're cutting off flow of energy to draw attention to those areas. So physiologically, it's almost like we're mimicking injury in a sense, so that when we release the pose, that the healing mechanisms of the body are drawn to those places. And so extra nourishment, extra fluid, extra chi, prana, energy is drawn there. And so there, you know, again, there can be a sense of discomfort that can come here. That's okay. Just about 3 minutes here, so about halfway there. And sometimes in Taoist text, you'll see the metal element called the gold element, which makes sense. That's the gold is sort of like the goal. If we can talk about a goal, and the actual character for metal is it looks like a house with two kind of nuggets of gold in it. At least that's how it's interpreted. And so it's like we're kind of entering into this house to uncover these treasures. So we'll begin to come out of this one. And what we'll do is just come back to center and just crawl out to the belly. Crawl to the belly, just spread along the ground and maybe make a little pillow underneath your head with your arms or your hands. Just rest there. This one can be a rather difficult posture, and so we come into this neutral place to feel that rebound again, just like we did after the breathing exercise. And so we'll often take these rebounds after the posture to, again, absorb Again, that idea of absorbing the nourishment and drawing attention to these areas, but also just to feel. Feel the movement of energy, feel the movement of fluid. And then to notice this relationship of the physical, the mental, and the emotional. Sometimes these postures will bring up various emotions, memories, thoughts. In yogic theory and Taoist theory, there's no differentiation. Like energy does not differentiate between the three. The physical dimension, the emotional dimension, and the mind dimension. And so when chi is released or freed up, it can manifest in myriad ways. That's what we just observe, notice. And out of the rebound, we just start to just slightly wiggle, just move just a little bit. Yeah. And then that movement gets a little bit bigger. You're starting to stretch and feel into, as if you've just entered a body for the first time. The sense of curiosity, feeling deeply in. And we're going to stay on the belly. This next posture can be a little bit difficult on the screen, so I think I found the best angle the other night, so let's see if this works. It's a pose called open wing. It used to be called broken wing, but we changed it to open wing. It just sounds a little bit better. And the way we do it is we just bring one arm out to the side. We'll start with the right arm. Now this arm can be directly perpendicular with the body or angled up a bit. And it doesn't necessarily have to be straight. It can be a little bit bent. The goal here is we're trying to get a stretch across the arm through the chest. How we achieve that is we bend the left leg and then step the left leg over the right hip. So there's a twist involved here. And you'll start to feel a little stretch. Now, this is where, again, you can play with the angle or the bend of the arm. Now, you may keep rolling over till you're kind of way over on the side ribs, but you don't have to get too aggressive here, and you don't really want to. Now, you can keep this, bring the left foot to the ground. I like to lengthen the leg out. You might bring the head down to a pillow or just the ground. And then again, I use the left hand with the fingertips down to just create a little bit of pressure, just pushing a bit. Some people I've seen even bend their right leg and kind of bring their 2 feet together. Again, you might have to watch me do these things, but yeah, I think you've got a good idea now. And we don't stay here too long. The upper body is much different than the lower body. And so often get asked to do like a shoulder class or something with Yin. But the upper body, the muscles are much smaller. The tissue is much thinner. And so we don't need as much Yin in the upper body. The upper body is better served through movement. But an occasional hold like this is good. It's in the lower body where the tissues are really big and thick, big bones, big joints, where Yin is really super helpful. It's helpful here as well. We just don't need it as much. We just stay here for about 2 minutes. Notice where your breathing is. Good, let's just come back to neutral now. And from here, where I like to go is usually just lengthen the left arm out and roll over to the left ribs. Might use my right leg as a kickstand and just move the right arm around in circles. So just exploring the range of motion in the right shoulder. Yeah. Go both ways. If we don't intentionally do it, we often don't explore our entire range of motion in our shoulder, which can create some issues, for sure. The move it or lose it principle is very real in the body. The body's constantly adapting, and so we want to make sure our joints are being used so they stay fluid. Connective tissue stays elastic and strong. And just doing something this simple is extremely helpful. Yeah. And then we'll come back to neutral and we'll do the other side. So the left arm out, and this left side might be completely different. Left arm out. Roll over, right foot steps over. Yeah. You can lengthen out. Put the feet together, whatever works. You're never pushing this. These muscles are smaller. There's not as much structure there. And so we want to go easy. Our intention in the yin practice is as far as sensation goes, is to try to create the broadest sensation as possible. If the sensations start to get really small and really specific, then it's probably wise to just back away and readjust. We want a nice, broad, sustainable sensation towards the mild end. Again, extremes of sensation is not something we're going for. In fact, the extreme sensations can actually send a message to the nervous system, to the brain, that there's a potential injury going on, so it needs to tighten up more. And so Actually work against ourselves if we're going too far to an edge. It's always best to hold back. Good, just a few more breaths here. And then we'll come back to neutral. And again, we'll just lengthen the right arm out this time and roll over and just move this left arm in circles. Yeah. And then let's just come back to neutral. Again, keep doing that if you need to. I think I did it a little bit less time than I did on the other side. And we'll just end up in Sphinx. So Sphinx posture is bring the elbows underneath the shoulders, roughly. Again, the elbows can be a little bit wider, a little bit tighter, a little bit in front. What this pose is typically used for is just to create some compression in the low back, which is great. We can't avoid that. It's a really good reason to do this pose. But my intention for putting it here now is to more open the chest. And so you might create a little more broadness in the collarbones. And then I like to be a little bit more intentional in the breathing here. So the breath's a little bit more full. And ground down through the elbows. And I like to bring just a count to the breath, a simple count. So I'll typically do a 5-count inhale and a 7-count exhale. But depending on how fast you count, you can change up the number. I like to exhale a little bit longer. And so I'll just guide you through a couple of rounds of that. And so let's just exhale together. And then inhale for 2, 3, 4, 5. A little pause. And then exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Pause. And then inhale for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause. And then exhale for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause. And just keep going like that, something like that. Those little pauses at the top and the bottom can be really nice. So this nice big open space for the lungs. And there's also a visualization I like to do here, sort of a lung purifying visualization. And what that is you just imagine this kind of white light moving around the lungs in a figure-8 pattern. And so you might imagine this white light, this white stream of light moving behind the left lung, around the outside of the left lung, and then around the front of the left lung. And then going between the lungs, maybe through the heart, behind the right lung, around the outside, around the front of the right lung, back through the center, through the heart, and then behind the left lung. So it's like, again, like this infinity symbol, figure eight, moving around the lungs, purifying, refining. It's the air qi. It's one of our sources of qi in traditional Chinese medicine. Air qi, there's grain qi, which is our food. Feeling the purification process. Using the whole lung. Absorbing new air, new nutrients. Releasing what's not needed by us, but needed by other beings. As we exhale, you can feel the compression of the belly, the digestive system, the lower intestine perhaps, or there's some stimulation of the digestive system happening as well. One more minute here. Stay with the breathing, with the visualization. Perhaps letting go of the face a little more and the jaw, the eyes. And then just come down very neutral, just lay flat. You can let go of the visualization and the breathing pattern if you want to. We'll begin to move again. So stretch. You might press back to all fours and move around there through the spine. Even a downward dog can be really nice here, or a vinyasa, like a flow, a slow flow. Nothing too drastic, but just getting some muscular energy going, some energy flowing. It's always a good thing. And then when you're ready, we'll settle back into just a standard child's pose. Knees can be close or a little bit wide. Close to the knees, the more flexion you'll get in the spine. The further apart the knees, the more neutral spine you'll have. You can even put a pillow or something underneath the chest. That's what I like to do. Arms can be forward or can be beside the body. Or you could be using the hands as a prop. Again, lots of freedom here. One of the major aspects of the meadow element is this idea of structure. Metal buried deep in the earth, almost kind of giving the earth its structure, how the earth was formed. But like I said, the elements aren't meant to be isolated. They're meant to work with each other and be balanced. And something I've found over the years of teaching yoga trainings or leading yoga classes or something like this, I used to be very non-metal at all. Like I used to just sort of, not necessarily wing it, but just kind of, I was sort of scared of the rigidity stifling my creativity. And then over the years, with the encouragement of a few people, I've become more structured about my classes and my trainings, which counterintuitively has created much more freedom and creativity within my classes and my trainings, just because I don't have to think about what's coming next all the time. There's always this uncertainty that's happening, which is there anyway, even with a structured plan. So there's lots of value in this meadow element that's not natural for me, but it's become extremely valuable. This idea of structure and method. Good, let's come forward and again move through the spine. Or sometimes I'll just sit back on the heels and move the arms around, just reaching, opening. Even just kind of lifting the arms like this is really nice. It's like whenever an athlete wins something, they always go like this. And there's a physiological change that happens, like it's not like I won, it's like I feel like really free and open. Yeah, and you do this when you're in a kind of a down mood. Sometimes it can kind of transform you. So I often do this. And then the next posture we'll do is called, in Yin we call it Anahastasana, but you might know it as puppy dog. It's basically downward dog with the knees down. And so we just come into yoga tabletop and keep the hips above the knees. You might even bring the knees a little bit wider. And you start to walk the hands forward. And you let the heart melt. Now you can keep the arms forward, reaching forward actively, or you could bring the arms a little bit wider. Or you could bend both arms and put the head on the forearms. Chin can be down or forehead could be down. Could even put a prop underneath the chest. Some people like to do this. And this can be a rather uncomfortable pose, and I tend not to do it very much in public classes. But we're at home, so it's a little better. So yeah, just you could set the chest on a prop or a pillow. Idea here again is to just create some length through the chest, across the shoulders. There's also some extension happening in the spine. And just can feel the heart melting down, like gravity's taking hold of the heart and just pulling it down. Again, you're always allowed to come out early. It's not even really early, it's just, your body gets to a point where the pose has served you, you just come out. The number of minutes that I hold is completely arbitrary, it's meaningless, there's no magic to it. And so, this is your practice. Perhaps an emphasis on the exhale, especially the pause at the very bottom of the exhale. One of the images often used with metal is that it can be melted down and formed into many different objects. And even after it's been one object for a period of time, it can be melted down and be created into another object. And one of the objects that's often talked about is forming the metal into a knife, and the knife which is used to cut away what's not needed anymore, or cutting away the layers to get at that treasure at the very center. And that's really what practice is, whether it be meditation or yoga. Sometimes we think of just we're adding to, we're given techniques, we're given all these methods, and one day we'll find that perfect method. But really what we're trying to do is just pull away, take away from, keep what's needed and move out of the way what's not needed. And so we're actually shedding layers. So an inquiry question with metal could be, what in my life could be cut away? What in my life is unnecessary? Begin to come out of this. You can just drop the hips back towards child's pose or come out to the belly or to a seat, whatever works. We'll rebound for a short amount of time. Sometimes in this process of shedding, we can find gaps or spaces. And so another inquiry question, honestly exploring, where do I need support, or how can I find support? Another one sort of goes together. Process is not linear. It's twisted, turned. Sometimes seems like it's going backwards. Good. Let's begin to come up, and we'll come to a seat. Just find a seat. Take your time. Let's come into a simple butterfly pose. Let's bring the soles of the feet together. I always like to elevate a little bit, just so the sits bones are up off the ground. It allows my pelvis to tilt forward. Support under the knees can be nice. You can use whatever you have lying around. And then I like to always start lifted, extended, and then coming forward fairly actively, and then gradually from the bottom to the top I start to round. So I'm still kind of reaching forward, and maybe along the way you explore, you might get to hear and say, huh, that's interesting, and just kind of rock a little bit, and then move a little bit more, a little bit more. You might even stay up, at a certain position the whole time, or you might let the head go and just drop all the way. And so exploring the spine little by little. But also all these forward folds, we're compressing, we're stimulating the belly and the digestive organs, and even compressing the lungs a bit. We're collapsed, so it can be a little bit more difficult to breathe. That whole apparatus of lung, diaphragm, belly is is interrupted here or restricted. The associated season with metal is autumn, which last week we did wood, that was spring. But there's like this autumnal quality to, at least in my experience, of this time that we're in. And here where I am, the weather has been very autumnal, fall-like. But also this idea in autumn of going in, beginning this process of of transformation, of going in, shedding away, and then regrowth. And so in many ways, this is like an entering into the cocoon, so to speak, and really investigating internally what's happening. Becoming familiar with our internal processes, both in body and mind, and being open to transformation if necessary. This idea of letting go. Metal wants to hold on and be really rigid, but there's a reality that comes when fall comes. Trees shed their leaves. That's just what happens. You can't stop that process. And so there's this letting go aspect. It's really healing for the whole human, but for metal in particular. And so going along with that, the associated emotion with metal is grief, but a sense of healthy grief, of it's okay to grieve. Many of us have lost a lot, and we're sort of waiting in this uncertainty. It's okay to be confused and to grieve that. Sometimes that grief can take the form of anticipation, just like need to anticipate what's next or need to know. None of us know. That can be a sign of grief, this constant anticipation. Like, when's the pose going to end? When's the practice going to end? When's the virus going to end? What's next? What's next? What's next? Our challenge is to arrive exactly where we are. Be with the process as it is. All right, let's slowly come up and just pause here. So an extension, just a lift, a nice easy seat. And now the next pose we're going to do may require a prop, though it's not necessary. I like to use one. And we're going to do a supine fish pose. Now the prop can be anything from a block, a blanket, or something fancy. But again, like I've said many times, when you're at home, anything is a prop. So some people just use a towel, and you can just roll up a towel or a blanket like this. And you'll just set it in the middle of your mat, just maybe at the top. And we'll keep a good distance between the prop and your back. And we'll just come down. We want the prop to go up between the shoulder blades. The idea here is to passively let the shoulders get really broad, and then the arms can come wide. You can let the head hang off or let the head set on something else. Soles of feet can come together. That's just traditional fish pose, but if you just want to just cross the legs, it's fine. The main thing we're trying to do is just get a nice passive stretch across the shoulders. You can just do this flat on the ground too if you don't have anything. Sort of the more intense way is to use a block. You can actually drape a blanket or a towel over the block, and you just set it on its second level. So blocks have 3 levels, 1, 2, 3. The second level. This is a more intense way. Now, you want this corner of the block to be kind of, right below the shoulder blades. This takes some adjustment for sure. And you just let the block come up between the shoulder blades and let the head fall off the back, or you could put another block underneath the head at the top. This is pretty intense, but I really love it. And the shoulders come broad, the arms come wide, palms up, and soles of feet together, or legs just crossed. And we want to just really give ourselves to the prop. If you experience discomfort with the elbows being up in the air, you can experiment with putting things underneath the elbows. And just be right here. And just sort of along these lines of this theme of letting go and allowing, and also just giving yourself a break. A lot of us were so quick to get busy right after we were forced inside. But it's okay, again, to give ourselves space, to allow processes to unfold. And there's this poem that one of my teachers shared that I really like. It's by a poet named Maya Luna, and the poem's called Give Up, which again sort of seems counterintuitive, but it's this concept is really beautiful. And she says, when you fail, don't be so quick to dust yourself off with pep talks meant to get you to rise up triumphantly and exclaim, I am not giving up. Don't be triumphant. Instead, give up. Yes, that's right, give up. Not forever, but just for now. Just for a moment at least. Just give up. Give it all up. You will be tempted to comfort yourself with spiritual concepts meant to assure you this is all for the best. This is all part of a grand plan to cleanse you, purify you, to teach you a grand lesson, to make you triumphant, glorious, heroic. No, don't do any of this. Don't be a hero, but also do not be devoured by shame, by self-hatred. This is just the same game played backwards. No, just give both up, just for a moment. Just stay low, low to the ground, your false self shattered. Breathe the grass, taste the dew, inhale the soil. You failed, you broke, life broke. Kiss the brokenness and receive your true self is hidden in these spaces in between. Kiss the brokenness and receive. Your true self is hidden in these spaces in between. Begin to move if you'd like, or just stay if you're really feeling this. You want to stay here a little longer, I really want you to. If you want to come off the prop, I usually just drop over to one side gently. I want to drop off. And perhaps breathe a little deeper, embracing yourself, your practice, a sense of gratitude. If you'd like to, you can make your way up to a seat and just pause for a moment. I want to thank each of you deeply for your practice, for showing up to your mat and practicing with me. It means a lot. I really appreciate it. Have a really, really wonderful day. And again, just allow yourself to be in this moment fully. And may all sentient beings enjoy happiness, peace, joy, and safety, and be free from suffering and the causes and conditions of suffering. Namaste.